Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a LEED Fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti, and I get to interview a green building professional once a week and really learn about their green building journey. So today, I've got a green building expert with us. We've got Kathy Wardle with us from Perkins&Will. She's a principal and director of sustainability there in Vancouver, British Columbia. Kathy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks very much for willing to speak to me.
No, I know we connect through our LinkedIn group, and actually Perkins&Will, we do some education together, helping professionals pass their LEED exams. But today it's about you and your story. So take us back. Where did you grow up and go to school?
So I'm a Vancouverite. I grew up in Vancouver. I went to school. So I did an undergraduate degree at the University of the University of Oregon. In Eugene, Oregon. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. And I did a degree in environmental studies and international studies and was very much interested in the impact that the built environment had on our environment. So, and then I went on to, after taking a year and a half off after my bachelor's degree, I went back to school and did a master's in environmental and resource management studies at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the other side of Canada. So I come to this industry with a very interdisciplinary approach, trying to understand how this industry can be better from a sustainability perspective.
It's fascinating, that background, and obviously working with a large firm now. So, connect a little bit on maybe the green side. Where did you start to feel like sustainability, green buildings? Where did you first start to hear about that?
Well, I've grown up in a family that has been connected to the real estate building sector. So I have a dad who's an architect who was a developer in the city of Vancouver. I have an uncle who's a builder and a mom in real estate. And so I kind of grew up in this industry, but I think it was more through growing up during a time of heightened environmental awareness in British Columbia. There was huge protests against full growth logging on the west coast of Vancouver Island that were kind of really during my informative years in high school. And it just made me realize that industry is everywhere. Industry has an impact, but how do we work with industry to think about different business practices? And then when I went on to do my master's program, I realized that the building industry I looked at the building industry from a kind of a waste resource management perspective and did my thesis on looking at the construction and demolition industry and understanding how much waste was generated through the construction industry, particularly in Metro Vancouver. And, I was fortunate enough to meet Thomas Mueller, who was working at the time for the Greater Vancouver Regional Authority. And he was very much interested in having a study done on, what were kind of market barriers to reusing materials in new construction. Thomas now is the CEO president of the Cascadia Green Building Council and GBCI Canada. So it was through a series of personal connections that led me to connect with Thomas, and that really, I think, started my journey in this, that connected me with the green building industry.
That's amazing. In the Pacific Northwest, my mom's from Oregon, actually, even though I'm in Atlanta, Georgia now, and just tells me the stories of just recycling at such a young age, obviously the timber industry, and just a beautiful part of the country. So it's great you have those roots, and then Canada. So it's coming together for me now. So Kathy, now, obviously you've been at Perkins&Will for quite some time. So fill in just, after you got that master's and how'd you get into that next position?
So interestingly enough, when I was working on my master's, Busby and Associates in Vancouver had just delivered a project for the city of Vancouver where they had dismantled an existing warehouse and were able to reuse about 70% of the materials from that building demolition in the new material testing center. And so that was kind of a featured case study in my master's thesis. And so when I graduated, I moved back to Vancouver. And of course, I hit the streets knocking on doors saying, do you need someone like an environmental scientist, somebody who can help your clients understand what sustainability means in architecture and the construction industry? And so I went back to Busby & Associates at the time and kind of pitched this idea to them. This was the day before September 11th. So the next day, the market crashed. Everything went sideways for me as a young graduate. But I ended up doing some consulting work in corporate social environmental responsibility. I did some consulting work. And then sure enough, 6 months later, I got a phone call from Busby & Associates saying, hey, are you still available? We have a client who is really interested in developing some tenant guidelines. And there's this new rating system that's coming into the marketplace called LEED. Oh, wow. And we're really interested in knowing whether you can help us with this. And do you know anything about it? So, I was just lucky that they kept my resume on file. And I obviously maybe made an impression during that first interview way back in September, on September 10th. Oh, yeah. So it pays to persevere and to stick to your values and what you're passionate about. And, when times are tough, like we're in tough times right now during a pandemic, that I think, one piece of advice I would give is sticking to your values and things will work out.
What great wisdom there. So when you look back, do you have any mentors or anyone you looked up to? You mentioned Thomas Mueller there, your family connections to real estate. Who else maybe had some influence on you?
I would certainly say there's a few people within my own organization. Peter Busby, who was leading Busby & Associates before we joined Perkins&Will, certainly took a chance on me and opened the doors in terms of sustainability leadership within Perkins&Will. And then also, I would say my current managing director of our Vancouver studio, Susan Goosh, being a female leader running a high-class design studio now, I certainly appreciate her leadership style, her ability to run an organization very effectively, to support young women in growth and leadership, and showing that, as a woman and as somebody who wants to pursue professional goals, but also have a family life, you can do it, and there's ways to do it. And so she's been a really, I would say, a strong mentor of mine from a personal and professional development standpoint. And then there's others locally, Dr. Ray Cole, a leading architect and educator at the University of British Columbia, certainly inspirational in wanting to educate the next generation. And I learned a lot from him in my early days of joining Busby & Associates and Perkins&Will. And he's now retired, and he's still a mentor and a friend.
Those are some great influences. So, and you've had direct access. So Kathy, tell us a little bit about, as we understand it, Perkins&Will maybe acquired the other firm that took that leap of faith on you, maybe 2004-ish. So tell us about how'd that go, and what positions have you maybe held within Perkins&Will?
Yeah, it was certainly a really exciting time in 2004 when we joined Perkins&Will. And we were given a really unique opportunity. And I think I was given a unique opportunity to work with several key leaders within Perkins&Will, Paula McBoy, who's based in our Atlanta studio, and Tom Azina at the time. We were empowered to come up with a sustainability strategy, a corporate strategy, how we could help bring about kind of knowledge leadership across the entire organization, how we should walk the walk in terms of day-to-day business operations, how we would partner with different industry organizations for continuing our advocacy efforts. And then, obviously, how do we work with our clients? Like, what would be key market opportunities? How do we support our clients in developing greener buildings, more sustainable buildings? And so, from 2004 onwards, Paula, myself, and Tom and others have led that corporate strategy. I did take maybe a bit of a step back while I had some kids around for a little while, but now I'm back and helping co-lead with a number of leaders from within Perkins&Will, what we've called our Living Design Initiative, recognizing that it's not just about sustainability anymore. It's about a diversity of issues that our clients and our staff are facing and what the world's facing. So we recognize that we need to address issues of health and well-being, inclusion and diversity, regenerative design, how do we create resilient buildings and communities for the people in which we're designing for, in addition to issues of just good practices around sustainability. So, the marketplace, the changing dynamic environment in which we're working in terms of a changing climate, recovering from a pandemic, it's really making us all, I would say, staying at the top of our game in terms of, figuring out ways to lead by example and help our clients and our staff deliver great projects.
Absolutely, and it forces you to innovate, future-proof. A lot of what you said is what we need to do for the environment. Perkins&Will is really known for your sustainability work, but also just how do you future-proof as a company, right? And you've got to make sure you're thinking ahead and you're doing that. So for those that aren't as familiar with Perkins&Will, can you tell us a little bit about the company, 2,600 people or more? So tell us a little bit about Perkins&Will.
Yeah, great question. We are a global design practice. So we have roughly 2,500, 2,600 people. We work in market sectors around the world. So we have a number of offices throughout the United States, in Canada, in China, in Europe, and in South America. We are primarily focused in delivering architectural solutions, whether that's new construction or building renovations. We also have a very strong interior design practice, and then an urban design, urban planning, and landscape focused discipline as well. So we have definitely a talented organization. And then, we have a lot of partnerships with great organizations, great consultant teams that we work with. So, our work is a result of those partnerships with consultants and clients around the world.
Oh, absolutely. I've got to ask, 2004, how many people ballpark did you have there at that time?
Oh, gosh, probably under 1,000.
Okay. So a lot of growth over that period of time. And in your role now, principal and director of sustainability, can you tell us some more about how your day-to-day is?
My day-to-day involves a lot of kind of identifying opportunities with our clients, whether that's sustainability scopes, setting strategic policy direction for Perkins&Will. I also sit on a global sustainability advisory council. We are part of a larger DAR group of companies. And so I sit on a collaborative advisory council with members from some of our other partner organizations. So, while I tend to focus most of my project work out of the Vancouver studio, I get to elevate up and look at kind of bigger strategy issues that's affecting all of Perkins&Will, and then kind of how we mobilize or take on strategic endeavors with our partner organizations.
Great. Yeah, I'm familiar with DAR Group as well. But let's look back just a little bit more. What are some of your proudest achievements?
It's a great question. I think I've been very lucky to work on some of Canada's first LEED green building projects. So the first project I was responsible for when I joined the firm was the White Rock Operations Building, which was a small operations center that achieved LEED Gold. And that was really transformational for the BC market sector, Vancouver, the Metro Vancouver area, and in Canada. At the time, it was the first new construction project. There had been one existing building that had gone through the LEED system at the time. It kind of brought to light opportunities for market transformation in terms of, best practices around material procurement, adoption of renewable energy technologies, also a lot of deconstruction opportunities for reusing materials. And then, I've had opportunities to work on a number of LEED Platinum projects, including the Van Dusen Botanical Gardens, which also pursued Living Building Challenge and got PETAL certification, the Center for Interactive Research on Sustainability. And, today I still oversee a number of projects pursuing high goals, aspirations through the LEED system, but also whether the WELL Building Standard or the Cascadia Green Building Council zero carbon building standard. So many of our clients are ratcheting up their performance requirements. And, our role is to help navigate, what's the best tool, system, set of priorities for them to meet those aspirations.
That's really cool. Thanks for connecting the dots. All the rating systems, international, lot to keep up with there.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of great tools out there. I still believe LEED is great from a holistic standpoint. But, our clients come to us and say, what's the best tool for our project, for our occupants, for our stakeholders, for meeting our reporting requirements. And, we have to help them navigate and justify why third-party validation is of value.
Absolutely. And speaking of LEED, you're a LEED fellow, right? You're in that,
thank you.
Last year. So what has that meant for you?
For someone who's not an architect or an engineer, but working in the architecture industry, for me, it was, I think, a great milestone in terms of being recognized by my peers for a lot of hard work over a number of years and just gaining additional, credibility in an industry where, I'm not a registered architect or engineer. So, just really trying to push the boundaries in a different professional sphere. And being recognized for that was really a true honor to be recognized, a notable group of peers.
I love how you're embracing that. Okay, our little secret, I got a business degree from Georgia Tech. So for any listeners that are regular listeners, you can take that note, but I'm not an engineer, but still, that's good stuff. Let's look ahead. If you had a crystal ball, what's coming next in this green building movement?
I think one of the top agenda items for a lot of people in our industry is understanding the impact our industry has on climate change, and how do we help our clients decarbonize or make a transition to kind of electrification? How do we use less energy? I mean, it's a huge challenge because we're talking about individual behavior change, habitual changes, adoption of new technologies, and building a sense of a trust in those technologies that they're going to work and deliver and help us make that transition. So I think there's a huge amount of effort going into understanding the carbon impact of the buildings we are delivering, where we have a deep bench strength of team, our expert team looking at that for what it means for Perkins&Will specifically. So I think that's a big top of mind issue for us right now. But while we focus on carbon, I don't think we can lose sight of things like habitat loss and how do we ensure we're kind of restoring habitats in the sites that we're developing on so that we don't lose like species of bees or birds or other flora and fauna, because those also have really valuable benefits in terms of helping moderate our climate, mitigate stormwater, create diversity in a healthy planet. And then, I think water is also another top of mind issue, right? It's probably a more undervalued resource. I know we live in a water-rich part of the world, but we are seeing the impacts of climate change in terms of droughts, heat domes. And so connected to that is a loss of water availability. And so how can we be more strategic in conserving water? Anyhow, I mean, these are all the big issues that I think we've been talking about for quite a while. I think there's just a growing heightened awareness from more of the general public around these issues. And then, what is our professional responsibility to address them in the projects that we're delivering for our clients?
Well said. I agree with all that. So everyone listening, go back, rewind it 2 minutes here and listen to that again. So thank you for sharing what's happening in that heightened awareness. Let's talk a little more about you, Kathy. What's your specialty or gift?
Specialty or gift? That's a great question. Sometimes it's hard to reflect on, your personal traits or attributes or strengths. I think maybe what I'm most passionate about and where I feel like I'm most effective is that I like listening to people's problems or challenges and trying to help solve our clients' goals through the lens of sustainability. So I find that I often help translate our clients' aspirations for their program and kind of help make the connections to how we can make them better from a sustainability standpoint. So I like facilitating client workshops. I like strategy development. Often I'm more engaged in the upfront part of a project where it's about strategy development, listening to the client, understanding where they're coming from, and then where we can take them in terms of, how quick do they want to move? What's their trajectory? Where can we help them have the biggest impact? And so, I think it is important to understand where all of us have some strength to play. And then also understanding when do you bring in other experts to help you deliver upon your skill set or what you're helping your client to do.
And grow that kind of depth of bench, right? I mean, the client appreciates that. Any tips on how to be a really good listener? Because that's what I'm also picking up here. You're an excellent facilitator, problem solver, but a lot of that's being a good listener, right? Any tips for someone that thinks they're not a good listener?
I think that comes with time. I think I've grown to be a better listener over time. Sometimes it's just sitting back and letting other people talk and get their ideas out rather than jumping in with your own ideas. Because I think as you maybe grow in responsibility, part of what I see as my role now is actually to let others emerge and grow and share their voices. Interestingly enough, I heard Barack Obama speak at Green Build a couple of years ago, and he really talked about, surrounding himself with young, talented, expert professionals and really taking the time to listen to them and then often have their perspective shape, whether it's policy direction or, future direction. And so he said, surrounding yourself with young, talented people and letting them emerge and grow and listening to them really he felt it's made him a better leader. And I don't know, just listening to him speak about that skill set in terms of listening really resonated with me about, trying to let people around the table, shine and giving people the chance to shine too. I think that's a role of being a good mentor.
Mentor and leadership. And that was in Atlanta, right? A couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was in Atlanta.
What a great talk. And you're practicing that now. So let's talk about either good routines, rituals, habits. Do you have any good habits, routines you could share?
Well, interestingly enough, I think one of your, pre-interview questions was like, have you read a good book recently? And just related to kind of routine and habits, I recently read Atomic Habits by James Clear. I don't know if you've come across that, but I just found it really interesting because I think in the last 2 years with the pandemic, people's behavior has changed and we've had to adjust our work habits. And so I read it kind of as our organization was talking about, how do we get people to come back into the workplace? Because we have to change our habits. We've all been very comfortable from working from home. And, how do you start a new routine? How do you start to begin to change those habits and leave behind bad habits? And I think there's a lot to learn. It doesn't happen overnight. And so for me, part of, changing habits or setting good habits is, I really try and take my professional working hours and take them seriously. So, it's, how do you get up in the day? How do you start your day? How do you kind of put in place a clear division between home and work? I have 3 kids. I really try and prioritize when I'm at home. It's time with my kids, like put the phone away, turn off my email as much as possible. That's been a little harder during the pandemic because work is at home. But, being deliberate during this kind of work from home phase about setting kind of boundaries, particularly, in a family setting, when and how do you turn off work so that you can kind of be more present for your current family? And that's something that I'm very mindful of as I have 3 kids and they all have different needs and trying to kind of lead by example for them as well.
And they're watching. I have 3 boys. They're 13, 10, and 8. And you're right. They're watching. They want that. They want to see where your attention's going. That book, though, I have to second it. Atomic Habits, just with the cue and the craving and the reward, and just how do you not just add a good habit, but how do you break a bad habit? So anyone listening, you have to get Atomic Habits there. So thank you for sharing that with us. Kathy, let's talk about bucket list. I'm a fan of the bucket list. Is there any adventure or travel, or do you want to write a book, another book? What's on the bucket list?
What's on the bucket list? Well, I just booked a bucket list trip for my family. So I think one thing that the pandemic has taught me in talking to friends is who have, especially older kids, have said, 2 years have gone by and now my kids are graduating. And so we kind of missed out on some family activities. So, not putting things off, really trying to prioritize things for yourself or for your family. And so, for myself and my husband, we really enjoy hiking in the backcountry. And so, we've just booked to go into a backcountry lodge in northern BC with our kids. And, it's, for me, that's kind of my rejuvenation time. And so trying to make sure that those kind of bucket list trips happen to rejuvenate and feel inspired for what I do. And for me, going back into the backcountry where it's natural, it's pristine wilderness, and really realizing that there is more to city life and that actually some of these pristine environments are the ones that are kind of regulating our planet and that we have to protect, really provide inspiration for why it keeps me going on my day-to-day life. So that's certainly a bucket list trip that's going to happen hopefully at the end of the summer. Yeah. Anyhow, that's one.
I can tell you're being intentional and the loved ones, but also nature, and it also brings you peace, and you're a lot of things all at once there. So when the world opens up even a little more, is there a even further destination you want to make sure you go to one day?
There's other places in the world we'd love to travel to. So we have family in England. So getting back to see family, that's priority. But then also, going somewhere like the Galapagos, or maybe as far as going to doing a safari and potentially seeing some of the big game animals. Like, I think when I talk about habitat loss, there are some amazing species on this planet, and the ability to kind of witness them, I think time is diminishing. I don't want to be negative, but how do I find the opportunities to experience some of the wonders of the world while they are still intact or exist?
Oh, that's good stuff. Thank you for sharing a peek into the bucket list, good habits. We did hit on a book. I'm not sure if there's even another one you'd recommend, but just in general, do you like to listen to a book, pick it up in your hands? Some I interview are more kind of trade publications. Some just love books. Some need fiction, because I do nonfiction stuff all the time with green building. So what about you with books?
Well, a great book that I read recently was A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. He's also written another couple of books, but The Gentleman in Moscow, talking about, kind of escaping from, reading about climate change or resource management, or I do like a really great novel, very well written. It's very eloquent, takes you back in time, kind of to a period of time in Moscow and the Russian ballet, and a diplomat who lives in this hotel because of, his political journey and the time during kind of the Russian Revolution, which for me was just really fascinating, and kind of escapism to a certain degree, kind of just, sometimes you just need to escape from your day-to-day world. And then, I'm also listening to a lot of audiobooks. I find I read a lot for work and I'm on the screen a lot. And so I'm finding taking the time to listen to audiobooks is another great way to kind of escape from your day-to-day professional world and still be kind of stimulated around new content, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I have a 13-year-old, so I'm listening to more books about, 14 conversations with your 14-year-old and understanding what your 14-year-old is going through. So, I'm in a busy time with my family life and trying to understand, how do I become a better parent and be patient with them as they go through, changes that they're experiencing with their friends socially and in high school.
Great book recommendations. Thank you. I'll link them in the podcast show notes so everybody can check out these books.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's a whole range there.
It's good stuff. I love some of those. I'm like, okay, I need that. I've got a 13-year-old, 14 coming, so I'm going to get that one.
It's a really good listen, because I think like my daughter would hate me for saying it, but I feel like she's a bit of a textbook case right now, and so I find that sure. all the tools that I can get in the parenting kit are really helpful.
Yeah, because it's different than when we grew up at that age. It's totally different. So, no, thank you. As we start to wind down this just amazing conversation here, 2 final questions. One, Kathy, is there anything you wish you'd have known earlier in your career? Any just career advice you'd have known earlier?
I guess, one thing I would maybe encourage people as they start out in their career journeys is don't be afraid of making connections. And when people are willing to kind of open the door or connect you with others, don't be afraid to follow through. You may not have all the right questions to ask or the answers. But I think having early conversations with professionals in an industry that you are interested in can certainly open your eyes to what's possible. Because between doing my undergrad and my master's, I didn't know that there was going to be a quote unquote a sustainability position in an architecture firm. That didn't really exist at the time. And so, I guess it's not being afraid to kind of uncover, the potential as it relates to your personal interests, and, having as many conversations as possible when you're trying to explore what you want to do from an education standpoint, I think can be really valuable.
That's really cool. No, thank you. You're right. The human connection to just relationships. Sometimes I think we're afraid to do a follow-up because we're worried it's going to turn into something that's going to take more of my time. But no, do it right there in the moment. And just, who knows? Who knows where it goes? Well, my last question, let's say there's someone listening to this podcast right now. They're getting really excited by hearing your story. What words of encouragement do you have for them if they're jumping into this green building movement?
Persevere. I would say, jumping into the sustainability movement means that you're a passionate individual. You care about kind of value-based issues, and really sticking to what you value and finding alignment with an organization or partners or people, I think will help people persevere in the long run, because, you want to align with like-minded people in order to kind of fulfill your kind of personal mission or how you want to bring about change in this world. And you want to be surrounded with positive people who can look for solutions rather than kind of get bogged down in what can be sometimes an overwhelming topic around sustainability. Some people can find it really overwhelming. And so how do you surround yourself with like-minded people who are like-minded and that can really support where you want to go?
Like-minded and persevere. What a fun conversation. Thank you for spending time with us today. We'll link to those books and make sure we link over to your LinkedIn. Anyone that really enjoyed this, shoot Kathy a message and let her know what you thought of the interview. Kathy, thanks for spending time with us today.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. It was great catching up.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.